Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. My name is Alison Byrne, and I'm the Director of Exhibitions and Education at Virginia MoCA. And just a few housekeeping items before we begin tonight's program. If you have any questions during the discussion, please feel free to use the chat function. In fact, we encourage you to do so. Stay engaged, ask questions throughout the program. We will leave some time at the end for Q&A, and our team here will be reading those questions as we go and selecting a few for the Q&A portion. We would love to call on those of you whose questions we select to unmute their mic and ask your question directly to the panel if you feel comfortable doing so. We're thrilled to have so many of you here this evening on Zoom, and just so you know, we're also streaming live on Facebook. So if you enjoy the talk and want to share it with others, you'll find it archived on the Virginia MoCA's Facebook page. I have been looking forward to tonight's program for quite some time. We are joined by artists Wanda Raimundi-Ortiz and Mark Thomas Gibson, who are two of the 27 artists currently on view at MoCA in the exhibition Shifting Gaze, a reconstruction of the Black and Hispanic body in contemporary art from the collection of Robert B. Feldman. The 27 artists in Shifting Gaze draw inspiration from history, art history, popular culture, and create works that are powerfully exploring important themes such as identity, beauty, belonging, race, sexuality, and displacement. They're challenging us to listen, to be open to new perspectives, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. This exhibition at this time has proved a really important outlet for our community in Virginia Beach to heal, grow together, find empathy, have hard conversations, and be inspired to learn and connect with others. I'm so looking forward to learning from Wanda and Mark tonight, having spent so much time with their work of art in the gallery, and we're thrilled to have the work on view at the museum. We are also joined this evening by the collector, Robert Feldman, who I cannot thank enough for sharing his incredible collection with us and our community here in Virginia Beach. Moderating tonight's panel discussion is Shannon Fitzgerald. Shannon is the executive director of the Mennello Museum in Orlando, Florida, and the curator of Shifting Gaze. It's been such a pleasure and a gift to get to know and get to work with Shannon and her team over the past year or more to bring Shifting Gaze to Virginia Beach, and I hope we'll find lots more opportunities to collaborate in the future. So let me introduce Shannon, and then I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce the rest of our very special guests. Shannon Fitzgerald is the executive director of the Mennello Museum of American Art in Orlando, Florida. She is a modern and contemporary art curator, museum professional, writer, and educator whose work focuses on international, emerging, and mid-career artists and thinkers. She was executive director of Rochester Art Center in Minnesota, a non-collecting contemporary art museum. And prior to that, she was chief curator at the Contemporary Art Museum, St. Louis. For over 18 years, she has created exhibitions, community-focused initiatives, and publications with a diverse roster of artists from across the globe. She's taught art history and curatorial practice and has been a visiting critic, curator, lecturer, and juror nationally. Shannon's research interests include exploring the diversity of global art making and how culture informs art, which impacts society and improves communities. Thank you, Shannon, Bob, Wanda, and Mark. Take it away.
Thank you, Alison. I'm really delighted to be here and to be joined with two extraordinary artists and one extraordinary collector. This exhibition opening on the East Coast at MoCA means a great deal. It's been an honor. And we imagined 2 years ago that this show would remain relevant when we traveled it. What we couldn't imagine this past year and what we've all experienced. And to think about everything that's happened this year and to look at Wanda and Mark, artists at the forefront and making us think and heal and deliver. It just means a lot to talk with you. I've known Bob now for quite a while, and it's a curator's dream to be able to have access to a thinker who thinks so much about contemporary artists and the artists in this exhibition. All 27 mean something to him and their work and how he collects. So I really look forward to diving in. I just have to thank Alice and her whole team. The show is beautifully installed. You pivoted when COVID happened and created wonderful education programs. Digital platforms truly, really reached out. I'm just so proud how much this work is getting in the community. And Gary Ryan, thank you so much for working with us. It's been an honor. So now I have the opportunity to introduce you to the artists. Mark Thomas Gibson joins us from Philadelphia. He uses modes of caricature, pop, fantasy, and narrative to reflect on current American history. The work most often takes form in the prints, drawing, painting, and books. Mark received a BFA from Cooper Union and an MFA from Yale University School of Art. He has been included in numerous group exhibitions, most recently on view in solo exhibitions at Resting Space at MMB in LA, The Dangerous One at the Rosenwald Wolf Gallery at the University of Arts in Philadelphia. He exhibits regularly at Fredericks and Fraser in New York and at the Loyal in Stockholm, and participates in the group shows The Curator's Egg, Paul Castman Gallery in New York, Woke, Contemporary Art Museum, University of South Florida in Tampa, and Being in the World at Salon 94 in New York. Mark has also participated in a program we're proud of in Orlando called Flying Horse Editions, and returned after Shifting Gaze opened and made a stunning, powerful print that I'm proud to say is now in the City of Orlando's public art collection. Mark is represented by Fredericks and Fraser in New York, MMB in LA, and Loyal Gallery in Stockholm. He's currently assistant professor of painting at Tyler School of Art and Architecture, Temple University, and lives and works in Philadelphia. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wanda joins us here from Orlando, excuse me. And we're so delighted she lives and works in a city I call home. She's an interdisciplinary artist whose work spans video, performance art, installation, drawing, and endurance. Wanda has exhibited both nationally and internationally, including exhibitions at the Bronx Museum of Art, the Orlando Museum of Art, and the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery, among others. Her work appears extensively in books and catalogs, and she is the recipient of numerous awards, most recently the Art History Maitland Museum Arts in Action Award, and the University of Central Florida 2018 Woman of Distinction of the Year. Her work is included in the collection of the Cornell Fine Arts Museum in Winter Park, the Orlando Museum of Art, Museum El de Barrio, New Jersey City Museum of Art, and Dr. Robert Feldman's collection. She has created many performances, endurance pieces for the city of Orlando in our community at times where healing and need and recognition were deserved. Most recently, last year, creating a powerful performance about the many people still suffering in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Very powerful work. Wanda received her MFA from Rutgers and attended Skowhegan School of Painting and Culture. She now lives and works where she is associate professor at the University of Central Florida.
Thank you.
Welcome, Wanda. So now I'm going to introduce Dr. Feldman, and then we'll get to some of the artwork right away. Dr. Feldman is a collector of contemporary art with one of the most important collections of art in all of Florida. The power of his collection, conceptually, formally, across contexts, sensibilities, and interests are the result of an extraordinary vision and a passionate quest. The exhibition Shifting Gaze, a reconstruction of the Black and Hispanic body, shares his unparalleled visual intellect, fueled by knowledge, curiosity, humanity, and a keen eye. In addition to the artists in this collection, his broader collection of art includes works by Nancy Rubins, Elizabeth Murray, Petyah Coyne, Brad Kahlhamer, Diana Al-Hadid, and many others. He collects work from artists from around the globe, and it has had a deep philosophy for collecting, which I look forward to him sharing. Selections of artwork from his collection have been exhibited at the Mennello Museum, the National Portrait Gallery in DC, Cornell Museum of Fine Arts, and Orlando Museum of Art. Welcome, Dr. Feldman.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to talk about the two pieces in the show right away, beginning with Mark Thomas Gibson, who weaves difficult truths and narratives in his work to, I think, elicit powerful, needed conversations. Mark, would you please share information about your work and talk about the piece in this exhibition?
Hi, so thank you for having me here tonight. It's an honor to speak to you and speak with Robert Feldman, and to also speak with Wanda, who's becoming a very close, dear friend. This piece for the show is for session one. It's part of a series of works that all derive from my second book, Early Retirement. There's procession two as well. That is a kind of a brother to this piece. where this information that you see here, this procession of bodies being walked through the streets by police officers or lice officers. Actually, I was thinking about ICE officers at the time when I was thinking about the lice thing. This was all work and imagery that kind of came out of 2015, 2016, like leading into the election. And of now President Trump. And a lot of the work, I guess, some people have said it seemed somewhat prophetic of what has transpired over the last 4 years. For me, it was more like a callback on everything that I kind of know about world history and American history. And I didn't really see it so much as a possibility, but more of an inevitability. So when thinking about this piece, I wanted to try to generate and think about bodies, mostly people of color, Muslim bodies, queer bodies, LGBTQ bodies in general, Black bodies being paraded in the street as a part of this weird kind of mixtural correlation between like the far right and police state. And it's kind of crazy when I made this work because that wasn't really so clear maybe to everyone and so transparent, like the role of the far right and like racist hate groups and the police officers that are on our streets that are here to supposedly protect us. And that's where this piece kind of came out of. It's drawing, it's painting, it's a kind of an intermix, it's a bit of a collage object. And it's one of my favorites. I love this piece. I'm happy to see it again, and even in reproduction. It really takes me, it oddly takes me back. And it's an honor to be in the show. It's an honor to have this piece in the show and to have it in relationship to Wanda's work, especially. So with that, I pass it on to you.
Thank you, Mark. I get so moved by looking at your piece, needing to know what happened before and what's happening next. And I think that's that moment you are putting us in right now. Like, yeah. What is next? And that anxiety really stems in that painting.
Welcome to my world.
No, I do miss that piece. And I was so thrilled to have it join this exhibition and the timing. And it continues to speak. There's an evolution and a single object that I find amazing.
Thank you.
And then this is a nice segue to Wanda, because representation in the figure, in the image, and I think you talk about expectations and binary relationships that come through. And I'd love for you to share your thoughts about bargain basement sovereign.
So bargain basement sovereign was a response to, I want to back up because I had some thoughts. I had something very clever that I wanted to say, but I just want to back up and kind of just anchor it a little bit. And up until that point, I had been making work that was dealing with kind of expectation and kind of examining Latinidad, being Latina, and being part of the yin and yang of machismo, right? And in my mind, you cannot have a macho man type without a counterpart, without the Maria counterpart, the person who's willing, that kind of co-signs into that narrative where I can, well, if I come to the house and I want to eat food and it better be made and yada, yada, yada. And interrogating even the way I was raised, kind of very old school Puerto Rican mom, the low key people telling you like, well, if you don't do it for him, someone else will, si no tú otra, right? Mm-hmm. And so these kind of narratives stemming from watching soap operas, the continuum of these stories of the poor misunderstood woman who's kind of vilified, but at the end she's very submissive and she succumbs to all the troubles, but because she maintains a brave face, because she is kind of pious, she ends up getting her prince on the white horse and she gets the fancy house and all this stuff. And these are these kind of things that kind of keep coming up in my work. And so the need to create this kind of elevated alpha, super alpha female, hard to ignore kind of person with the way I created her, I was thinking that I think she's pretty recognizably a Latina woman, right? But the image that you're looking at is just a still because there was a whole performance that goes with this, where I have a whole court. I've got women that follow me. I have like ladies in waiting. I have a throne that I sit on, and I sit and I hold court in a gallery or whatever setting. And in order for you to participate with me, you have to put trash on the silver tray that I have on my lap. That's the only way that I'll even look at you. And so it was this kind of power play of how, like, I was really curious about what I wanted to create an image, really, honestly. And I'm sorry that I'm stumbling around. It's just that there's a lot to unpack in a short amount of time. But this idea of strong women, and I'm putting big fat quotations around that, are able to kind of endure a lot with a lot of poise. And so that's one of the things that you see in this performance, in the way I'm sitting, is being able to sit, and I sit with this tray. I barely move. I'm as poised as possible. No matter what you put on me, my motivation is that I'm not going to break. And ultimately, people have asked me about this performance. It's like, well, what do you do with the trash? And my answer is like, what does it matter? Does anybody ever ask about the trash that they leave on women or leave on each other? It doesn't matter what I do with it. You're not checking. And I think when I first started this piece, it was about holding a mirror to people, a sort of accountability. Because when you're not recognizing that you're leaving trash on people, you just do whatever. You come in, and this is like a metaphor for people's personal relationships with partners, friends, parents, etc. You come in, oh girl, oh my God, I get it, whatever. And then you leave all your trash on them, and then you don't ever go back to see if your people are okay. But this then ended up being a much bigger examination about like submissive relationships and this idea of having to kind of sit and endure. And it's something that I started in grad school, but it never really went away, and ultimately became the platform for the Reina series. It was where I broke away from the Wepa Woman comic drawing series, and I started this, which turned into a whole new way of me examining anxieties and fears, and being able to pull my anxieties apart and examine them, like kind of all these little pieces, and then turn them into a character, much like you would create a comic character,
Well, I think that's a lovely connector between you and Mark, and some of the things that Allison brought together by inviting the two of you together is this procession, and it's filmic, and it's narrative and fragmented. The story that you capture of your gaze looking at me in that Reina, that's not the complete story. And so that procession is both abstract and literal with that. Thank you, Wanda. This show wouldn't have happened without your vision and interest and your generosity. I think of you as generosity drives some of your collecting, and the sheer desire to share it with the world, the sheer desire to part with your beloved artwork for over 3 years is significant. So, and I thank you for it, but please, will you share your world as a collector and collecting these beautiful artworks in this exhibition and beyond?
Well, my uncle was an art dealer, so I grew up with art, and I grew up understanding that it was a very important thing, was a very important part of our culture. And at the time, art collecting was not as, say, fashionable or as trendy as it is now. So it was sort of an oddity at that time. But I had an uncle who explained to me that, beginning with the French Impressionists, that it was about breaking the rules, it was about inventing your own game, it was about knowing all the rules to your own game, and really about pursuing your own vision. I guess I'm interested in the quality of the work, I'm interested in the craft, I'm interested in sort of the struggle of the artist and how they work through the struggle, whether it's interpersonally, whether it's a struggle with society, and that it becomes deeply felt. I think the most successful works of art are deeply felt. The only advice, because I've been doing this a very long time, So one of the things I like to do is to get people started collecting. So if you're going to start gambling, you don't go to the $1,000 blackjack table, you go to the $2 blackjack table. So if there's anybody listening and you want to ask me a question on chat, what I would recommend, if you're even thinking about it, is buy yourself a print, a museum quality print, learn a lot about the artist, learn how the print was made, learn who the artist's contemporaries are, start reading art reviews, start going to museums, and then just kind of take it from there. So for me, it really wasn't a grand scheme, but it was just a curiosity to know more about the world and also to live with these beautiful objects and to, I guess, maybe learn about other people's struggles other than our own.
I think one of the aspects of this exhibition, it's a beautiful teaching exhibition. For visitors, guests, those familiar with art history and those not, some of the most delightful tours have been children through this exhibition, my experience. And I know Alice and truly have great stories. To that, Wanda and Mark, you're both academic professors and you both teach. I would be curious if you could share your role as an artist and a maker and your responsibilities to your students in teaching right now. Mark?
You want to go, Wanda?
I feel like this is a tag team right here.
I mean,
yeah, no, go for it.
No, after you. No.
Oh, well, so I take my spot in front of students personally and seriously, right? In terms of who I am sitting at that table or sitting in front of a Zoom screen, talking to students of color, talking to everybody who's kind of out in the fringes and, being a representative of other, it's like tons of dots, right? Being who I am at the university. And I feel it's not enough to just talk about art, but I think it's important to talk about art the way I talk about art, which is from a very lived experience. I talk about art as a woman of color who's making work. I make sure it is really my imperative, and any student who's ever taken a class with me will tell you this is that my word is my bond when I say this, that my emphasis is about artists of color and that other, everyone that's in the parenthetic other. And I think that that's very important because students need to see themselves reflected in the material that's being presented, not as an aside, not like, okay, well, it's diversity month, so I'm going to show you these 3 brown folk that have nothing to do with anything, but that's just what's in my little lexicon or whatever. But that this is what's going on. I want you to see, people will talk to you night and day about Jackson Pollock, and they'll talk to you about like Frank Stella or whatever, but how about this person? How about that person? How about this? And I don't even make a big deal out of it. This is just what we are. And I think it's really important specifically to talk about artists that are living and breathing and working and hustling and moving right now, because then it doesn't look like this bizarre ivory tower that you have to learn how to scale the walls or whatever. No, it's right in front of you, baby. It's right here. Like it's front and center. We are the artists that have our boots on the ground. We're making moves. And like the wonderful Cheech Marin said once, I heard him speak at he was oh my gosh, what's the word? A keynote speaker, holy moly, at a conference. And he said, we come in peace and we got you surrounded. And that's just totally how I felt. Like, you know what, at some point you're going to have to look around and recognize there are all these artists from all these other walks of life. And that's this one way that we've been talking about art and talking about this art experience. It just doesn't work that way anymore. It's important for students to see artists like me, see artists like Mark making work, hustling, like artists like Mark at Yale. What? Holla? I'm just saying, like at Tyler, yes, absolutely. That's exactly what he should be. The brother got his accolades and I got my accolades, and we should actually absolutely be in front of students. And so I take this very, very seriously. Tag it, Mark.
Okay, I'm in. Take my hand. We should just take our hand and like.
Yeah, right.
All right, there you go. So, yeah, I mean, I take it really seriously. Being a teacher, it's something that I wasn't. I personally was not someone who wanted to teach at a younger age. I really hated school. And it was really because I felt it was a place where I would ask questions and I wouldn't get answers. Or I'd always be told, like, later down the line, you'll hear this answer. Later down the line, someone will explain it to you. And I'm like, why not? Just like, and if you don't know, just tell me you don't know. So education for me, it was kind of felt like a bit of a shell game. And so when I graduated from undergrad, I didn't want to go back. And then when I finally did go back after being coaxed back into going to grad school, I happened to make a good choice and I happened to get into a great place. And after that, I actually had my questions answered. And having your questions answered and someone really being honest with you is more important now than ever. So as a teacher and as a faculty member, I always try to bring that to the table. And I try to be honest with my students what I think about their work. And I definitely try to be honest with them about how I feel about this moment, about the politics of this moment, about the pandemic in this moment, what human life means to people and to institutions at this moment. It's extremely important to really think about that. The nature of my work, and I also can tell from my conversations with Wanda and the nature of her work, it's not that simply that we look at society and we're able to point at it. There's a certain level of vulnerability and care and love. I mean, for Wanda's work to walk through the streets with people, to like music playing, her culture, her body. And it's like, yes, there's a relationship with the character. And I think I use characters in a very similar way. There's to navigate that space, to navigate that vulnerability, because you know how necessary it is in the world. And I think teaching has that just naturally embedded in it. And you have to be a person who's empathetic, and you have to be a person who's able to make yourself vulnerable to actually teach people, and especially to teach artists.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And especially in the moment right now. And I remember how I ultimately got into teaching. I like Mark, I did not think I was gonna be teaching. Whenever I think about it, I'm like, how the hell did I end up over here? And then I go back and I think about all the wild turns that it took to get to this place, and being present enough to be like, you know what? I'll accept that challenge. This is scary. I have no idea how it's going to work out, but I'll accept that challenge. For me, that challenge came when I met with Emma Amos, and she asked me about grad school as if I'd gone. I said, no, I don't know. No, I can't afford to go to grad school. What are you talking about? And she was like, you're a woman of color. You can't afford not to. Mm-hmm. Oh, I have dropped that bomb on students ever since, and having that moment that like, oh snap, like this real, I tried to parry, you know what I mean? I tried to like bob and weave with her, and she's like, all right, so you got your little associate's degree, and you know, how's that working out for you and your family right now? And I'm like, oh, and I was, young, bartending, thinking that I'm in my New York hustle, and this is, one of my other old friends who used to be like, yo, you wear poverty like a badge of honor, and don't you want more for yourself? And I then realized that I was actually putting barricades in front of myself because that's all I understood. Yeah, is that hustle and struggle. So when she tells me, you can't afford not to go, I was like, oh. So then I, it's because she pushed me that I got into Rutgers, that because of that degree that I was able to go to yeshiva and teach at yeshiva in New York at Stern College for Women. Next thing you know, I'm packing a trailer to go to Florida to teach, like for real. And and to sit in front of students and be like, no, let me tell you, let's talk about hustle for a second. You know what I mean? And like, and be able to bring that kind of conversation. Like I told my students the same thing, like you can't afford not to, especially now, because if not, this moment's going to fade, and then we're going to end up in the dark. You need to hustle now as queer, brown, XYZ, other.
To that, if I may, when I talk about this particular collection of Bob's and his desire to share it, even before it was curated and brought together, other pieces he shared at almost every museum in our community. And I think it's very interesting. We're not Miami. Our collections in Central Florida, there's a certain barrier and risk with Bob assembling this collection. And I think that's why he shared it with so many museums, that as teachers, as artists, that material need to be seen. And I do think both of you make dangerous work and vulnerable work, and that proximity, you know, to be in danger. Some of that is with Bob's collecting. I think he has a great eye and good advisors, but what do you think about that, Bob?
Well, I think we did have that discussion when I was gonna, we were pulling the work together, and you were gonna put it at the Mennello Museum of American Art, and the museum got its start from a folk artist, and Winter Park is overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly Republican. And I just was wondering, are you really sure you kind of want to put this out there? And it really was a few years ago, before all of the police brutality and before all the Black Lives Matters. I mean, most of this work is about between 5 and 15 years. So I was just kind of collecting it. Both Shannon and I never knew that we'd find ourselves in this moment where the collection would have found itself so incredibly poignant. But I don't know, maybe art, like physics, maybe kind of senses something in the air before it's fully present or fully dominant. Maybe the artists were sensing something first, and now it's here, you know, that maybe the canary in the cave.
I was just thinking, Bob, that when I saw your work, your collection at the OMA, after, you know, my migration from New York City, and having seen some shows, and this is before, I think is when there was a transition of directors. I was like, oh, all right. Because truth be told, I was very concerned. What have I done to my career to come to Central Florida, and it's very kind of genteel, idyllic, you know, central, you know, palm trees and like live oak, and oh, how pretty, you make art. And I'm like, yeah, I make art. You know, and I was wondering, I'm like, what have I done? But I saw your collection. It gave me hope.
Well, I grew up with sort of an art collecting family, and I knew, as Picasso said, that all art must be experimental, or it's not art. If, you know, Mozart already wrote a symphony, so if you write a symphony, it better be something different. And I guess it's all about, I think most artists, many artists who created revolutions, at least 100 years ago or 50 years ago, during their lives, never really got a lot of recognition. Now I think it's different, maybe because of our internet age, that people can get recognized very early. But I think I bought what was interesting, well made, and appealed to me. And I already sort of knew the story of my own life of white privilege. You know, having grown up in suburban Detroit, going to medical school at a state university, having a very successful physician's practice. I mean, that I kind of already got figured out and already mastered. And to a certain extent, it was already all handed to me. So, you know, when I just see art from other experiences, also the experience of migration, of people having been born or roots in one area and then having to come to another area, what that means when you're in between two cultures, I just found very interesting to me. And to the extent that I had the ability to put it out there and let other people react to it, I mean, let them tell me that's sloppy drawing or sloppy painting. I guess one thing that I haven't been insecure about is what I find interesting, what I find well made, and what I want to put up on my walls. I do listen to curators, and Shannon is a genius. And every time I want to learn more about my own art that I've lived with for years, I read, and I'll shamelessly plug the book here, Shifting Gaze. It's the best $30 or $40 you will ever spend. The essays are incredible. You will learn so much about art, as I have from Shannon. You'll have these sort of academic or the art historical references that she pulls out that I just had no idea of. But I guess I just haven't been insecure about the journey, because I kind of grew up knowing that, you know, Shakespeare already wrote his plays. You can't read, you know, somebody writes another play and it's just a rendition of Hamlet. That's not interesting. It's not new. It's not experimental, and it doesn't advance the science.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe that artists, like physicists, maybe sense something in the ether, maybe a little before the rest of us do.
Yeah, well, my dad always said that, he always said people of color are like the canary in the coal mine. So however the universe is treating them or the world's treating them, that's basically how everyone else is going to get treated eventually. And when I think a lot about my own work, I guess like thinking about the freedoms and the restrictions being put on Muslim people right at the beginning of this presidency, then slowly all of a sudden it turns into like taking children away from their families and putting them into like little camps, let's call it that. It's like we've seen this in history, and we're watching it happen again. And it's like, if you don't think that's going to happen to you, you're not really paying attention. And I think artists do that work and show up to show people and ask people to connect and to feel and to like understand and to speak up, you know. But I think with artists, it's just that we are just kind of compelled, like you can't help it. It's like, you know, you're just that kid in the back of the class, you just got to say like, hey, you know, like, hey, something's wrong here. And but what I found being that person or being a person like that is that I'm becoming more and more interested, especially in this moment, to watch the responses of individuals. To see what people do once you show them that there's a fire, what they do. And when they show you who they are, believe them. You know, that's for sure.
Well, I think that that goes to complicity that, Mark, you just drive home so bad. I mean, and the spectacle and where do I'm looking at your work. I want to know where I am. And I think there's a complicit nature that your defiance challenges, Wanda. You're defiant and you own it. I think it's very powerful.
I think you know, the two things I wanted to say, and we'll start with Wanda, is that when I look at her La Reina, we're all from God. We're all gifts. We're all beautiful human beings. Then we come into this world and we're thrown a bunch of shit. You know, you're this minority. You're from that neighborhood. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're not legally blonde, and so on and so forth. But really, I mean, the key to self-acceptance, self-love is to be proud and love yourself. And when I see the Reina series, that's really what I love is the self-love. Not in a bad way, but in a very good way in terms of self-acceptance and of saying, I am beautiful.
And I think for me also, there's a piece of it that's accepting my own brokenness, right? And not to say that my ethnicity, my appearance is part of the brokenness, but it's more like I'm good where I'm at. What's up with y'all? What are y'all doing that is like, you know, making me, that is kind of pointing this focus at me. And so me by nature, I'm like, I'm gonna put this right back at you. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to dance with you right now. Like this is not this, I'm gonna turn that right back at you. And then but also like wanted to show the vulnerability because there is damage, right? And I think when you are outspoken the way I am, right, and a lot of people are, there's this kind of this assumption, oh well, she's tough, she can't possibly get hurt. And oh no, this hurts a lot, and it hurts so much that I'm gonna have to armor up, that I'm gonna have to, you know what I mean, like roll up hard because it hurts. You don't step to battle if there's nothing to fight for, if you know something that you don't really believe in. And I think it's really important because of Mark, because of the work that I make, that some younger person be like, you know what, all right, you know, it's, I don't want to call it a recruitment strategy, but it's more like, yeah, you know what, you need but you know, yeah, no, but I think it's an invitation to like, look, we are the ones that are out here barking in the street. We are making work that, listen, I was telling Mark the other day that it's like, you know, there's a part of me that understands that I'm making dangerous work, that understands that some collectors don't want to have a picture of a chick in a 45-pound garbage dress, you know, charging down the center of Orange Avenue in the middle of their living room. You know what? Fine then. I didn't make it for you anyway. You know what I mean?
You know, I think there's wonderful slippage happening through time and history, and all of the artists navigate that in this exhibition beautifully. organizing this exhibition, I couldn't get out of 1968. I just really, my research, my head was there. I didn't live it. I'm now looking at 1968. I just watched the Chicago 7 and Mark mines history, you mine history in the colonial past, 400 years of history is mined in parts of this exhibition. So I think that is difficult, hard truth. So thank you for doing that. I would welcome some time. I want the guests to be able to ask your questions, but we have examples of new work each of you are working on. And I was so excited to see the preview, but welcome you sharing. Mark, Trudy, I don't know what the order is, but Mark, can you tell us what you're working on now?
Oh, let's see what the order is first, though. Well, my work, it really is kind of dealing with like what's happening in the moment. And so the two pieces that I'm showing everyone here tonight, one is a piece called Going Organic. And it's an image that's right now currently up in a show called Good Pictures in New York City with Jeffrey Deitch. The other piece is called Liberty Unto All Throughout the Land. And that piece is actually in a show at Kravitz Webby right now called Vortex. But they're more or less about like what's been happening over the last 7 months, 8 months. It's about like when people all of a sudden at the Whole Foods down the street, all like the peaceable, lovely, liberal people who love to look at each other as they grab the asparagus, they all of a sudden they snap and they're out here fighting for toilet paper and water. Like, when we were looking at what happened in Puerto Rico with Maria, and then President Trump had the gall to go down there and toss rolls of paper at people, while at the same time, now we know that there were facilities that were holding water that sat there with rotting food. Like that needs to get looked at. There's a cruelty that's involved in that. Mm-hmm. But also the condition of the moment when what going organic might actually mean is people getting back to their animalistic self and people getting back to that greed, and how that's part of the dynamic of some of those spaces and that institution is to think about class in that way, where you sit and where you walk through. The other piece is kind of about Philadelphia and like what was happening. We had people blowing up ATMs with dynamite at night. It was off. But just like adding elements of Philadelphia, the ideas of what this place is, that this is one of the founding cities of this entire country. And it's also one of the cities with the highest amount of actual Black home ownership in this country. But you also see some of the highest poverty in this country in Philadelphia, gun violence in Philadelphia. Cops, Mayor Rizzo. So I have Mayor Rizzo wearing a Klan hood as he's like statues being pulled away. I got Allen Iverson wearing his stepovers as he's like stepping over the American flag. We got like the Liberty Bell ringing out Free Doom as young people of color, people all diversity marching in the streets and bringing about change. So that's what I'm kind of at. I'm just, it's difficult right now to try to figure out what this moment is, let's say in these 2 weeks. So I'm starting to cooking again, but most of these works are all 66 by 89 inches, ink on canvas. And I make them with love. And I don't know, I'm just like, I'm experiencing them right now. Really, I think there's enough distance maybe right now in this moment to even start really experiencing them for the first time. So that's what I'm up to.
Your use of language, it's amazing. It goes from, a child speaking to punning with the police and lice and rice and peanuts and peas are our peace. Punning is not the right word. It's more powerful than that because it's a second glance. I had to look twice.
Because it's all there. It's like abstraction and abstraction in culture and language, and sometimes abstraction that comes just from survival. Like taking something and flipping the context, making it yours, making it usable, taking someone else's like strength and reusing it. Like when I think about that Iverson step over and, someone talking so down to this person and saying that they're not even going to be able to perform. This happened with the 76ers, Allen Iverson. For those of you who know, they know. But then those little moments in history and time where you can actually show up and you actually change the way that people see and they perceive things. Those gaps, when they happen, those fractures, when they occur, you got to step through them. You got to step boldly through them because they will close up very quickly. And I think right now we're in a moment of real change, hopefully, still, if the energy's right, if they don't try to blame everything on Russia and whatever, you know, if they start playing these games, but we have to be ready for it. You know, we got to be ready for it. This is just starting. Next month, it's kicking off, people. If my work is prophetic in any way, it's just getting started, yo. So.
Oh, it is, and I know you can be so specific to place that then is so universal to what's going on. Like I knew that was Philadelphia, but you feel it in Detroit and Miami and all these other places.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about doing a series of like Miami, doing New York, doing different cities, and trying to think about what that means. But it's like also at the same time I have to think about like, you know, what was my experience? Where was I? What was I going through? And not trying to just reproduce an image for the sake of it. It's like, you know, here's a topic and here's a picture, bang, bang, bang. You know, it's like my body, my brain, for some reason, when I'm drawing, it just denies me that. It's like if I want to try to do like 20 of those as like a series of some sort, my brain would just be like, no. And, you know, it's like, move on to the next thing.
The hands and the feet and the movement, the cyclical, you have like Liechtenstein waves going on and it's clustered. So clustered.
I love Liechtenstein, that's for sure. Yeah. But with like Liechtenstein. But there's like I love because when I do make the work, it's like I'm usually just dancing. I mean, it's just like, it takes a few hours to like get through it and make the stuff, but it's more or less like it's ink drawing. It's real direct, so you can only fall forward. You can't. Like all of it's kind of connected in the way I feel and the way I think. It's like about the idea of like stepping up to something and then trusting yourself to make the fall into it and then going through the other side. And there's only one way to go. So if you trust yourself, which all you got is yourself at the end of the day, you got to do it. You know, and that's for me, like looking at Wanda's work, meeting Wanda also in person, her energy, her strength, it's not, that's Wanda. And
now I'm blushing.
but the character that I saw in the work, and when I was thinking about the Petyah and thinking about that, holding people in their arms and making themselves available like that, just incredible, absolutely incredible.
Did I disappear on you guys?
No, you're here. I see you.
Oh, because I just got the Zoom weird thing that just popped up. I don't know what happened.
No, you're here.
Well, you're here.
She's trying to distract from the compliment. That's what it is.
No, child, stop.
I mean, I think that's the nurturing aspect of Wanda's hard work. I mean, it's so nurturing, and it's the hug. It's so much more than that. I'm being very simple, but taking your work on trust. Let's hand it to Wanda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love what you said about falling forward. And ink is my first love. Ink, working in ink, brushed, you know, just that is my first love. That was my life at FIT, and just straight balsa wood and brush, dip right in the pot of ink and just go. Just you can't take it back. You can't just go, right? Go. And something about that is there's a connection between that and the performances. I think that you know, I started with these drawings a long time ago, and then I moved into performance because it was the shortest and most direct way from point A to point B. And I had all these stories that I wanted to tell. I wanted to do all these comic panels and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I can't keep up with my own brain. But if I create these scenarios that you have to be in it with me, then we got a real sense, we have this real feeling, because now you're going to be in the room with me and I'm wearing this crazy outfit and serious as a heart attack when I do it, and trusting that everything is, that, you know, I'm going to fall forward, that everything's going to land the way it's going to land. And there's I think the vulnerability for me is in the, I don't know if someone's going to come and slap me across the face in the middle of a performance, walking up the street, or push me or do something awful. But like, there's a commitment to like, all right, this is where I'm at. I've lived a good life. I'm so down for this right now that however this goes down, this is where I'm going to be when it happens. You know what I mean? Like, there's just the very, very, very in the very present. And then this stuff happens, right? I got to a point very recently, and I said this before, and I'm not saying that I'm retiring from performance, but it's crazy out there right now, y'all. And because it's not just me anymore, because I have a family now of my own, I need to make sure I come home every night. There's a child's graduation I'm hoping to make it to, maybe meet some grandbabies. So I can't be out here playing. Someone's gonna, because it's a volatile time. And the work that you see here as part of the wig variant series that I started this year, once the pandemic started, where I realized life is just not where it is. And I think I had a very harsh awakening to exactly that, like this idea, what Mark was saying earlier about people out here fighting over toilet paper. Are y'all really fighting over toilet paper? I had just come down, and I said this the other day, and I'll say it again. I had just spent a month in this like sustainable art farm called Habitable Spaces for artists living, I lived out in Texas. I learned how to mess around with goats for the first time in my life. And I had, chicken shit on my boots and catching June bugs to feed them, and like being chased by guinea fowl. And it was like such a hard detachment from living, a middle-aged woman, academic, Subaru driving life, that when I got back, I was like, why is everybody spazzing out? You know what I mean? And people fighting over toilet paper. But it was not that it's not that I was diminishing the pandemic. I was just like, wow, I came back from that place like the way Charlton Heston came back from the mountaintop with the white streak and crazed look in his eyes, like he's seen the truth. And I'm like, oh, and I came back ready to plant shit in my garden and make a garden. I didn't know what I was doing. And Wanda's organic. Somebody just put it in the chat. I came back, I was ready to throw stuff in the ground, and I was going to make it happen. And I was not going to be part of this machine anymore. I feel like I suddenly was revealed, to the machine that has us all chained, that if we don't go to work, we don't go to work, we don't eat. And we might be sitting on property, but the HOA doesn't want you planting anything. So you have to go to work, even though you're sitting on gold. Right. And so that really like incensed me. My attempts at gardening failed miserably. And things started warping and getting all strange because I was trying to, get my hands up inside there and trying to take care of bugs and whatnot. All of this to say, what I was making was irrelevant. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? You can't contain nature. And this is what we're watching right now. You absolutely cannot. You can try to, you think you can dominate nature. You think that you can dominate people. You think you can dominate and say that brown people and white people shouldn't be doing, or that you can be black, but just this amount of black, but this amount of black is too black. So let's manage all that nonsense. And people are tired. I'm tired. Mark's tired. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can't contain it anymore. You're watching people be like, you know what? I'm tired of your shit. And then other like, well, I'm tired of your shit. And you know what I mean? And so you're watching this crazy struggle between people who have been, kind of these things that people have been trying to sublimate, their insecurities, their latent racism, people's oppression. It's all boiling. So what I ended up doing was creating these sort of three-dimensional drawings that became sculptures with like chicken wire and spray foam, and gold leaf and hair extensions. Essentially, I was trying to work with the materials that I made my very first wigs with, but now my wigs are mutating, the way my crop mutated, the way our society is mutating, the way disease is starting to change, how everything is mutating. And so these are these stand-ins. The wigs don't need me anymore, right? And so I set out to make these objects and then make these very careful drawings, almost like botanical drawings, like these sort of scientific drawings of little small areas, little details of the sculptures. And that just seemed like the safest place for me to work, because I just don't want to be out in front of people right now. We could Zoom all day long, but I ain't going outside with nobody, But I say that to kid, but I'm not kidding. Like, this is it, I worry about how people behave. I'm worrying about this. I've been worrying about his re-election since he got elected the first time. I can't even say President Trump without like hitching. I can't. is 45, always has been, always will be. I can't say it out loud. I've been worried about that from the very beginning. What's going to happen to our community? What's going to happen to my child? What's going to happen to my friends? What's going to happen to me? I know, light-skinned as I am, I've seen my fair share of garbage and been treated less than. So I can't even imagine. And now you're going to sit and gaslight people and like fan the flame and get people all fired up. I'll be making objects for a while.
They're very beautiful. They're very beautiful. They're like specimens in these studies and this cabinet of curiosity of something precious.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's what it felt like. And the experimentation of it, again, falling forward. I don't know what's gonna happen with this spray foam, but and I just watched like, oh, that's nice.
I love the shadows it creates, actually.
Thank you.
Especially
And then
talking about the roosters, and I was looking at it and I was like, you have that kind of, it's like what it starts to telegraph outside of itself. But then I like what you were saying about the botanical drawings, but with self-portraiture inside of that. It's a very interesting sense of like self-examination involved in that. And like watching something as an organic form. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And then there's the insanity of trying to hang gold leaf spray foam, which is insane. But I did it. I was like, you know what? It'd be awesome. This really low material and gold leaf the shit out of it. This is what I do. I take something simple and I make it incredibly tedious.
Well, we thank you for it, and thank Mark. And Allison's back, so I hope she has questions.
Sorry. Yes.
Hi.
We had lots of questions happening in the chat, lots of great conversation, but I would love to call on Catherine Custer, who has the first question. Catherine, do you want to we'll unmute you and you can ask your question for Robert Feldman?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Great. Dr. Feldman, I was curious first to know what drove you to collect pieces from Mark and Wanda initially?
Oh boy, I think it's sort of an amalgam of a lot of things. I rely on my own eye, but I also have people that I've known for many, many years who maybe think like I think, or maybe think better than I think, and are well-versed in art. And I want to buy something that's original, that's different, that's well-crafted. The fact that it speaks to society's ills is also terrific too. But as a collector, the art object means a lot to me. So I'm interested in the art object and how is it made? Is it different from the way other people have made art objects? Are they wrestling in their souls with something different than, and is the way they're wrestling in it interesting to me? I hope does that answer it, or?
Yeah, okay. No, that's great. And I guess kind of a follow-up question. Our country's been through a lot in the last 6 months, you could say. And I'm just curious if you see your role as a collector, has that influenced your interests in terms of what you'll collect in the future? What stories you're interested in, and yeah.
Right, because and I thought you were going to ask that question because I sensed it. So maybe if I was allowing what I want to happen to this country, I'd be collecting pieces of peaceful art, pieces of Xanax art, because it's all this tumult with COVID, Trump, Black Lives Matter, police brutality. It's quite a lot to have this all on your mind and then try and get to sleep at night. So maybe I'm thinking for, I don't know, visionary utopic art, but I'm kidding because I'm really not. I don't know. It's usually it's not an overarching scheme, but there is sort of something in the air that we're all kind of bitten with. But I guess for me, it's if there's an art dealer or a curator whose eye I really respect, and it's a trust that's been built over a long time, shows me something that they think is really good, that this person is really talented, then I'll look at it. And if it somehow resonates within me and I can afford it, then I may more likely than not buy it.
Thank you.
It's perhaps less shrewd and less thought out than you might think.
Sure.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Catherine. Clayton Singleton, are you still here? You had a question for Mark.
Yes, I'm still here.
Hi, Clayton.
How you guys doing tonight? Thank you for coming out. It's really, really dope.
Thanks, Clayton.
Mark,
Happy to be in Virginia.
Say again?
Happy to be in Virginia with you.
Oh, awesome. Say word. Mark, you mentioned that your work really talks about the past, as opposed to it being really prophetic, as some people might say. I'm a Black art teacher at a predominantly Black school, and I have a lot of courageous conversations with some of my white teachers and also some of my teachers who happen to be white, and I make that distinction. How do you have conversations with people who are seeing what's happening as a now situation, as opposed to trying to explain to them, or rather trying to explain to them that this is not happening now, this is simply a continuation? How do you have that conversation without discouraging their courage to actually have the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's complex because there's like, I mean, it's complex because sometimes, let me just get to the real about it, right? I feel that sometimes there's a willful ignorance in America about what's happened here. I mean,
Right.
It's just insane to me. I mean, I do understand that there's people who've been properly miseducated, that there's been concerted effort by institutions and by individuals who create textbooks that don't actually give the full track of what actually has occurred in history. I understand that there's bad teachers out there, but at a certain point, we were 4 years ago and 5 years ago, people were marching the street. Things were happening, and and it was on TV. It was breaking into CNN. So it's like, yes, maybe there takes up time. Maybe there had to be some kind of undercurrent. Maybe there had to be some learning now, and now there has to be some more work done. But what I'm hoping for is that this work doesn't just have to lay on the backs and on the struggle of Black bodies and people of color. Like I'm really and I'm trying to be accepting of people of color doing the work and being a part of the conversation, and trying to at the same time understand and navigate where are we on the sides of it. It's going to take something that this country has never really done, is to actually have a true conversation with everyone at the table. Because the conversation, let's say in the case of art, was happening, but it was always with those individuals, mostly non-people of color in the room, looking at the work, thinking that they're doing the work, talking about the work. It's, Harlem on My Mind, that exhibition that everyone talks about, where it's supposed to be about the artwork of Harlem, but it's a bunch of photographs of the thing, at a distance, So we're just in this odd, weird moment where we have to kind of accept that, yes, some people are just waking up to it. I try to have empathy, but that's being worn very thin lately.
I can feel it.
I try to show up, and I try to think about even my own ignorance and my own inability, what I don't know. I have to come with a sense of humility that there's so much that I do not know. And so if I start to access that, then I can walk up to that person and then I can speak to them, not to correct them, but to educate them. And then when they speak to me, I don't need to shut down my ears and go oh, here we go again. Here comes some bullshit. But instead, what I can hear is their honest, earnest interpretation of reality as they have known it, and then try to do that work. Now, it's very hard to do when you have a mouthpiece in the White House that is trying vehemently on a daily basis to divide and conquer. It's simple as that. It's just divide and conquer. That's how you rule people. And I think that what we are seeing in the last 7 or 8 months is that there's a need, a desire for people to come together. They don't look like each other. They don't have the same economic background. They don't have the same history. Who have respect and maybe possibly love for one another. Now that right there is something that they are more, the terror that creates. You can't rule over people if they're united. So we have to do the work. And it means that it doesn't seem like it's right every day. Sometimes you got to call people out, that prophetic truth that like Cornell West speaks about. It's hard sometimes to try to sit with that. So some days I'm great and sometimes I do. So, try if you, and sometimes I think about it as service. Sometimes I'm like, it's not service I should be doing. It's okay to take a knee. It doesn't always have to be on you, but you have to try to figure out where your allies are, and you have to try to share that weight. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
They were. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Clayton. Thank you for asking that.
No problem at all.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Clayton. I think we have another question from Beatrice Amberman.
Yes, thank you so very much for such a compelling exhibit. But my question is in regards to the title of the exhibit, Shifting Gaze. Can you develop more what the idea behind that was? And I was saying that it seems very appropriate for our times. We shift our gaze to things that are uncomfortable. And right now we see a lot of shifting. And I put an example over there how, for instance, in the Latino community, we have people that actually have died in places where people are packaging meat and chicken for others, and yet the contradiction of people having a hard work to put a mask to save and protect other people. So shifting our gaze. Tell me more about that. I'm very curious. Thank you.
I can begin that conversation, and that is such a great question because the title, I think, and not being silly, is shifting as we talk. The shift began as an art history notion that who owned the gaze, who owned the artwork, who commissioned the artwork, and that would be a very small group of wealthy white patrons. So throughout kind of the history of who makes who and who sees who renders those invisible, which I think is what you're talking about, that happened, that was real, but who had the ability and power to make that story invisible? And that's a crime. So the gaze really did come from an art historical space. That gaze was controlled by men, and permissions needed to be granted. And there's this tectonic shift that many of these artists are shaking up. Odaless, like Mickalene Thomas, like Wanda's work, you were not allowed. So the permission is gone away. These artists aren't asking.
No, we not.
But Beatrice, I think you allude to something, in a pandemic and labor, and what happens that is so dangerous about labor and work, who's inside, who's invisible, and those options, who's in the field, who's in the house.
Well, it is prophetic, and I'm very thankful of the artist for having, the prophetic view of actually bringing these topics at this time where we are in enclosed spaces. And so, on the perspective of our times, at this particular exhibit, how will you, express your art and verbally to others that may, we want to invite others to come and see the exhibit. And thank you so much for bringing it to Virginia Beach. But, as that relates to our times for the artists, can you tell me more about what would you share with the Latino community as to the importance of viewing this exhibit? Thank you.
Well, I think that the Latino community needs to feel invited to see these exhibitions. My personal experience has always been that many people in the Latino community, they see institutions like museums, libraries, things like that, and it's almost as if it was not created for them. Mm-hmm. And and I've seen this happen And I will share a story. I did an exhibition in the Museo Nacional de Puerto Rico in 2005. And I'm born and raised in New York City, but I'm Boricua all the way. And I have many, many family and friends, many people, many family members in Puerto Rico. And so I was, the dream of the diasporican that I am was to be able to show in a museum in Puerto Rico. And in my mind, I was on an imaginary white horse, and like some Puerto Rican Arc de Triomphe, and there was going to be like flags and pleneros and whatever. And I swore that with the amount of family that I have in my family, that the people, that they will come swarming to see uno de ellos in the museum. And the overwhelming response was, I'm not smart enough to be there. Eso no es para mí. I've seen it happen in New York. I've been that person who has gone into institutions hoping, from the Bronx Museum to all the other museums. And the only time I felt that the museum was speaking to me was a place like el Museo del Barrio, where the work looked and reflected me. So I think the idea is to get the word out that estamos presente in the museum, that we are there. Latinos claro, Latinos negro, like we're all there, and the work can speak to us. And and I think this kind of the assumption that we should not be visiting these spaces is also kind of this thing that kind of lingers, so that when you go to the museum, esas son cosas de loco, those are weird things. Those are, I just want to see safe palm trees, que sé que cuánto. But no, the work, like an artist like me, the criticism that I have gotten from the Latino community is that my work is not Puerto Rican enough, that there should be coquis and flowers and palm trees and beaches, and that's the extent of it. And I don't believe that. B, we as people in the contemporary world need to stay, we need to keep the pace with our peers, because we keep ourselves back by maintaining this sort of static position. So I believe that if we make the work, that my people, nuestra gente, are smart enough, intelligent enough, whether it's book smart, street smart, granja smart, whatever, but that we're smart enough to rise when we see the work, right? So if you're here with me now, you're listening to me now, I'm speaking English, Spanish, Spanglish, de todo un poco, right? Tell your friends, take your family members. You're here, right? So you made the leap. So ambientar la gente y traer la bulla, okay? So that's that. So now because it can't only be the museum's job, because I think that's the other side of it, is like, oh, well, they didn't feed us. They didn't feed us. This kind of sense of dependency. Well, they didn't make it for us. The show is here, is present. I'm here, Mark's here. There's a bunch more people that look and sound like us in the show. Now the comunidad has to come too.
Agreed. And a shout out to MoCA, because they translated all the works, and so yeah, we just need the community to really, and we do share, the opportunities. So hopefully that will happen. Thank you.
Gracias, Beatriz.
Thank you, Beatrice. She was actually on our Shifting Gaze advisory group.
Right on.
Which was made up of several different members, artists, educators from throughout the community, and she was just an incredible advocate and continues to be that for the exhibition. So thank you. This feels like a good place to end, although I think we could stay here and chat all night. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's joined us on Zoom. Thank you to Bob and Mark and Shannon and Wanda. Shifting Gaze will be on view at MoCA until January 3rd. We are free admission, time ticketing. You just need to book your ticket in advance before you arrive, preferably. And Shannon, where is the exhibition going to next? Because it's going to continue on a journey after Virginia MoCA.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. It goes to the Peeler Art Center at the DePaul University. And then it goes to Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia, where both universities are introducing it into the curricular, not just of the university students, but K through 12.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will see you all soon. Hope to see you at MoCA. Thank you, panelists. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.